Hey everybody. All right, so I've been able to go out fishing a couple times this last week. Uh, so my next door neighbor told me I had to go to the little lake called Juanita. It's in Siskiyou County, very northern part of California, just over the border from Klamath Falls. Small little lake out in the higher elevations, thick indigenous forests. In fact, you couldn't even see the lake until you were on the shore. So many trees around it. Really low, warm water, a lot of growth within the lake. But I was able to find a certain spot that had 12 feet of depth or so, um, which was about as good as it got. So they do not allow motors of any kind. Go figure. Kind of broke the rule. Didn't know that. I only have an electric. So I'm not really up to rowing, but I went out there and I caught 3 bass and 1 trout, and all of it on jerk baits for the most part. I did use a lipless crank, and I did catch a bass on that. I used and a lipless crank also caught me the trout for some reason. None of them big. At Juanita, they're small, but you will catch. So none of them big. Nothing over 2 pounds really. I did have one over 2 pounds, but for the most part, everything was pretty small, 1 pound maybe. So that's Juanita Lake, not too far from the town of Doris, Northern California. And yesterday, I wanted to give Klamath Lake a try. Now, Klamath Lake is looks like a sea, like a great lake. I mean, it's 25 miles long, 8 miles wide, with an average depth of 8 feet. Extremely shallow, and it's been hot up here. So, relatively speaking, not what I'm used to, but what they're used to. Lots of algae growth, tons of it. Lots of weeds, lots of algae growth. Very, 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 very shallow. Russell and I took the boat out at Rocky Point into Pelican Bay in the northern part near the kayak trails. And we finally, after zooming around, found I guess you wouldn't call it a gorge because, I mean, it was like 3 feet deep, but then finally we hit like a 12-foot spot. And it ran along the shoreline where the houses and the private piers were, and the private docks. And it was a rock ledge, and it ran along there, and the trout were massive, just massive, and by the schools and schools and schools of them. Now, my neighbor said that the fish in Klamath are pretty smart and very hard to catch this time of year. So, and he's right. Man, we were just hitting. I mean, you didn't need a fish finder. You can just look down and see all these fish. We were hitting them with our lines and our stuff. I mean, just finally, I figured, well, we'll try some trout bait, some power bait. And the first time I threw it out there, boom, I got a real hard hit. But my drag was way loose, and I couldn't set the hook well, and I lost him. So I think the trick there is just being a little more patient. Use power bait, and that will actually catch us some trout up there. We didn't catch any yesterday. The bite was as good as it got, but it was amazing. I mean, some of these fish were anywhere from 4 to 8 pounds that were swimming in schools. It was just, I mean, I've never seen that many big fish in that type of cluster before. And they were just swimming along the shoreline in that channel, or that rocky channel. Not a good time to catch trout in Klamath because of the warm. The trout is cool water fish, but we went to the deepest, found what we think is probably the deepest spot. So that's Rocky Point, Pelican Bay, and along the private docks there. And next, I'm still surveying it a little bit. There's 4 Mile Lake, there's Lake of the Woods, there's Klamath River, Yawana, which I never see anybody out there, but it's shallow too, and I know where there's trout. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get them. So it's I have plenty of power. Really nice. I mean, the battery stood up real well, and the boat went real well. So didn't need the fish finder. You can just look over. The water was crystal clear up there, crystal clear. You can just look over the edge, and when you see a fish, then you know that's where you fish. Anyway, I think that's a fishing report. So that's Rocky Point. Tons of fish along a rocky channel under the water, following the shoreline near the private docks. Jaunita, lots of fish there, lots of catching, nothing big, and you can't take a motor, so just row. It's not a big lake. Rowing it, if you're healthy, should be real easy. It's kind of windy though, so you'd have to row against the wind. The wind does get into that little lake. A lot of kids swimming in the lake. It was such a joy to watch the kids play. And that is the fishing report for this area so far. I will post another video because I plan on going fishing in the next 24 hours or so again, and we'll post. So maybe, hopefully I'll get a camera out there and show you guys what I'm talking about. Hopefully get you some good fishing footage, because I ain't got very much of that, do I? So terrible at fishing in Southern California, but much better at it here in Oregon and Northern California. You guys have a good time. Keep your lines tight. Again, jerk baits are working really, really well. And if you're fishing for trout, probably try to get them down to about 15 feet in warmer waters, and use power bait. Suspend power bait around the 15-foot level of a lake, and you'll probably catch them. So you guys take care, and I will see you later.